guys, Comic Boom here to review Mr. Miracle number 10. Do Mr. Miracle and Big Barda give up their son Jacob to Darkseid in order to foster peace between New Genesis and Apocalypse? Let's find out. Yeah, guys, Mr. Miracle number 10, to be blunt, not much happens. Unfortunately, not much happens at all. This is actually one issue where the 9-panel grid got a little grating after a while, and it was just more of the same that we've gotten in previous issues. Nothing really rocking the boat. We've had 9 issues so far. I think the first 6 really hit it out of the park in terms of really building up all the symbolism and all the stuff that was happening. Is this an adventure, a crazy story that's just taken place in Scott Free's head? These are questions that are still unanswered. Last issue ended. Issue 9 ended with us discovering that, in order to foster peace, Darkseid basically, through his minion Calabac, told Scott Free that, look, if you want peace, not a problem. I'll even give you the anti-life equation, but I want your son Jacob. And, well, that's how that issue ended, and we don't discover anything here. This entire issue is just basically Scott interacting with Big Barda. It takes place pretty much at their home on Earth, and Scott's just sort of angsting about it. He's really angsting about whether or not he should give up his son Jacob, and he's weighing the odds. He even goes out for drinks and gets drunk with the Blue Beetle and Booster Gold. And what I find interesting about that is that we know Booster Gold is fairly screwed up because from his adventures in Batman, when he gave Batman that gift going back in time, that screwed up. I'm not even going to talk about it. It's a mess. Suffice to say, Booster Gold's a mess, and we know Booster Gold ends up in Sanctuary. And I'm thinking that Mr. Miracle, since he tried to kill himself in issue 1, maybe Mr. Miracle should join Booster Gold and go to the Sanctuary at some point. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know. But in any event, it's clear that Scott Free, man, he's looking to get drunk, and he's angsting. He doesn't know what to do, but he's really worried about the fact that he can save billions of lives if he just gives Darkseid his son. And the reality is that he has a discussion with Big Barda in the issue, and it's a dilemma for him, because he says to Big Barda, he says, look, Barda, both you and I were raised on Apocalypse, and we turned out okay. And Big Barda basically says to him, what do you mean we turned out okay? Aren't you the guy that just tried to kill yourself? I had to take you to the hospital. I had to cry in front of strangers, hoping that you were gonna die. You think we're okay? Basically, she's implying we're screwed up. And the last thing I want to do is give our son Jacob. I don't want to give our son Jake to Darkseid and have our son end up as screwed up as we are, which is kind of ironic, because we think. As readers, we look to Big Barda and Mr. Miracle as superheroes, but Big Barda doesn't feel that way about herself, and the reality is that their lives are pretty screwed up, and it is true that Scott Free did try to kill himself, unless the whole thing is a dream. But it's looking more and more maybe that this isn't a dream. Maybe this is actually something that's playing out. But there's a lot of emotion that goes through this issue. There's a lot of great interaction, as there always is in the previous issues, between Big Barda and Scott Free. But in terms of moving the story once again moves at a snail's pace. Not a lot happens, so the mystery doesn't even build all that much. We get to the end of the story, the end of the issue, and Scott's just lying on the couch, tells Big Barda he loves her, and basically he comes up with his master plan of saying that he's going to take Jacob to give to Darkseid, but before he gives Jacob to Darkseid, Scott says, I'm just going to kill him. I'm going to kill my father. Scott plans on killing his father, Darkseid, just before he hands him, Darkseid, his son, Jacob. And that's his master plan. And that's really how the issue ends. Is that going to work? I don't know. I would have. It sounds a little bit too simple to me. I mean, I can't see it working. I think that there's more at play here, and we're just going to have to wait to future issues to see how it plays out. And there really isn't. I didn't find that there was a heck of a lot of symbolisms here. I didn't find that there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. It's just more of the mundane life of Scott Free and Big Barda, and Big Barda gets emotional, and they have an argument and they sort of fight over it because it's the one thing they're not talking about because they're avoiding the conversation, and Scott's even avoiding going back to New Genesis and to deal with the matter, and he knows the longer he waits, the more likely it is that more people, millions and millions and millions of people might die, because eventually if he doesn't go back, Darkseid's going to win the war because they got better armies, and they're going to win the war of attrition between New Genesis and Apocalypse, because Darkseid has more men, more people to throw at it, more to sacrifice, and so it's a tough call. But it looks like Scott Free has made that difficult decision, and hey, I guess he's got to do what he's got to do, and he appears, Big Barda seems to be very casual about his plan, saying, oh yeah, take Jacob and then kill Darkseid. So they got kind of a weird relationship. Big Barda gets emotional she gets emotional when he talks about it at one point, but then seems to be stone-faced when he just casually mentions, I decided, like as if it was only Scott's choice. Scott's decided. I don't know about you, but if I told my wife that, oh, honey, I decided that we're going to give up our daughter to stop a war, the fact that I would say the word I didn't include her in the decision making. I know Orion. I know that Scott now is almost like the High Father and the leader of New Genesis now that Orion was killed, but still, I'm a little bit surprised that Big Barda will let him make that call. Big Barda seems to show Scott a lot of respect in that regard. But in any event, interesting take on this. The art by Mitch Gerada is fantastic. Again, one of the things that's noticeable on here is Mr. Miracle is sporting a beard, and he looks pretty good in it. He wears a Shazam shirt. I think in every issue, sometimes he's wearing Batman shirt, Superman shirt. He's wore a Wonder Woman shirt. This issue, he's wearing a Shazam shirt. He wears different types of shirts. At one point, he has a discussion with a guy at a till. He's buying stuff, and he decides to ask a random clerk what he should do. Should he give up his son or to save hundreds of lives or millions of lives? If given, what should he do? And a random clerk. This seems extremely forced. This is one of the more poorly written areas in the comic book, because it doesn't make sense. Because the clerk starts talking about, well, why don't you use a life equation, which is ridiculous, because it just seems so forced, because we know we're dealing with the anti-life equation, and so this clerk tells him it's almost math or an equation, that explains like what life should be, like a life equation or something, what gives more people joy, basically saying, well, do what gives more people joy, which obviously that would mean, then it's basically, I don't know why frankly, if you talk to a random clerk, he probably quotes Spock I don't know, he'd probably quote Spock and say that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. That's what it is. That's the life equation, really. So the dialogue here is overall, it was kind of I think this dialogue is really wearing thin, and so this is an unnecessary issue. It didn't really establish anything. It's just more of the mundane. There wasn't even a juxtaposition here. We never even got some action or anything noteworthy. Just one long drawn. This is a totally useless issue. We could have had one page with 9 panels on it where Scott just decides, well, okay, what he decides at the end of the issue. But that's how the series has gone so far. But it's too redundant now. It's becoming redundant, and when you have great scenes like this, when you've had great scenes like this in previous issues, don't keep doing it again and again and again, because the redundancy will destroy the uniqueness of the series as a whole. And that's what I fear is happening here, because this has been done before. And now I'm glad we only have 2 issues left, because at least it means we're gonna be getting an end to this story, because I just hope it's gonna pay off here. So overall, this is probably the least interesting issue out of all 10 of them so far, but it's got a fantastic cover with Darkseid on the cover. I think it's my favorite cover, or my second favorite cover. The other one was the Valentine Day cover. That was great. But overall, guys, tell me what you think. Mr. Miracle number 10. I'd give it, for story-wise, I'd give it a 4 out of 10. You could definitely skip the whole issue. Story-wise, it's not necessary. Art was great, but again, it was an overuse of the 9-panel grid here. It would have been better if it just had a little bit more different kind of layouts and just a different, maybe some different shots. It was just getting a little bit tiresome. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a little grumpy tonight. I don't know. Guys, let me know what you think. And until next time, Comic Boom, out.